During an argument he said, "Protect me," and Rex bit down on my arm. At the vet clinic he pretended to be devastated, saying she probably sensed my aggression. But I saw him slip Rex a treat after the bite. I've been living with my boyfriend for 3 years now, and we adopted Rex together about 18 months ago. This pit bull was supposed to be our baby, our practice run before we started talking about real kids. Rex came from a rescue shelter, already house-trained and incredibly sweet. He'd curl up between us on the couch every night, follow me around the kitchen while I cooked, and greet me at the door with his whole body wiggling with excitement every single day. The first year with Rex was honestly perfect. My boyfriend seemed to love that dog as much as I did. He'd take him on long walks, buy him expensive toys, and spend hours teaching him basic commands. Rex learned to sit, stay, fetch, and even do this cute little spin trick when you held a treat above his head. Everyone who met him commented on how well-behaved and gentle he was for such a powerful breed. But something started changing about 6 months ago. First, I thought I was imagining things. Rex would give me these strange looks sometimes, like he was studying me in a way that made my skin crawl. The tail wagging became less enthusiastic when I came home. He'd still come to me when I called, but there was this hesitation that hadn't been there before. The first real incident happened during a minor disagreement my boyfriend and I were having about whose turn it was to do the dishes. Nothing major, just the kind of everyday bickering that happens in any relationship. But suddenly Rex was standing between us, not wagging his tail, just staring at me with this intense focus I'd never seen before. My boyfriend quickly distracted him with a toy, and we both laughed it off as weird dog behavior. Over the next few weeks, Rex's behavior toward me became increasingly unpredictable. Some days he was his normal, loving self. Other days he'd growl softly when I approached his food bowl or tried to pet him while he was lying with my boyfriend. I started noticing that these mood swings seemed to coincide with tension between my boyfriend and me, even minor tension that we hadn't openly acknowledged. I mentioned this pattern to my boyfriend multiple times, but he always had explanations. Rex was probably picking up on stress in the house. Maybe he was going through some kind of adolescent phase since he was still relatively young. Perhaps he was developing protective instincts as he matured. These explanations made sense, and I wanted to believe them because the alternative was too unsettling to consider. The growling escalated to snapping at the air near my hands when I tried to give him treats. My boyfriend would always step in quickly, taking the treat from me and giving it to Rex himself, saying I must be approaching too aggressively, or that Rex was just having an off day. I started to feel like I was walking on eggshells around my own dog, the pet I'd helped choose and had loved from the moment we brought him home. 3 weeks ago, I was working late in my home office when I heard my boyfriend's voice from the living room. He was using that special training voice he'd developed with Rex, upbeat and encouraging. I assumed he was just practicing the tricks they'd been working on, but something about the tone made me pause and listen more carefully. I couldn't make out the specific words, but the rhythm was different from the usual sit, stay, fetch commands. It sounded more complex, like he was teaching Rex longer phrases or more complicated behaviors. After about 20 minutes, I heard the treat bag rustling and my boyfriend's voice praising Rex enthusiastically. This happened several more times over the following week, always when he thought I was busy or out of the house. My curiosity got the better of me, and I started paying closer attention to these training sessions. I'd pretend to be absorbed in my work or household tasks while actually straining to hear what was being said in the other room. The sessions were becoming more frequent, sometimes happening twice a day, and always when my boyfriend thought I wasn't listening. Last Tuesday, I was in the kitchen preparing dinner when I heard my boyfriend's training voice again. This time I crept closer to the doorway, staying hidden but positioning myself where I could hear more clearly. What I heard made my blood run cold. He was teaching Rex to respond aggressively to specific phrases that he commonly used during our arguments. Phrases like "you're being unreasonable," and "calm down," and most chilling of all, "protect me." Each time he said one of these trigger phrases, I could hear Rex's responses: low growls, the sound of his feet shifting into an aggressive stance, and occasionally a short, sharp bark. But here's what made it truly terrifying. My boyfriend was also incorporating my name and words that I frequently used when we disagreed. He'd say things in a tone that mimicked my voice, then immediately follow with one of his trigger commands. He was literally training Rex to associate my speech patterns and my presence during conflicts with commands to become aggressive. I stood in that doorway for almost 30 minutes, listening to my boyfriend systematically turn our beloved pet into a weapon against me. The methodical way he approached it, the patience he showed, the rewards he gave Rex for each successful aggressive response, it was like watching someone plan a crime in slow motion. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed next to the man I'd been building a life with, realizing that he'd been secretly plotting to use our dog to intimidate and potentially harm me. The betrayal felt deeper than if I'd discovered he was cheating. This was calculated, ongoing, and designed to make me feel unsafe in my own home. Over the next few days, I started testing my theory in small ways. I'd use certain phrases during normal conversation and watch Rex's reaction. Sure enough, words like unreasonable or ridiculous would make his ears perk up and his posture change subtly. It was like he was waiting for the follow-up command that would release him to act. The full horror of the situation hit me during what should have been a minor disagreement about weekend plans. My boyfriend wanted to go to his friend's barbecue, but I'd already made plans for us to visit my sister who was going through a difficult divorce. Nothing earth-shattering, just a normal couple's scheduling conflict. But as our discussion became slightly more heated, I noticed Rex positioning himself strategically in the room. He wasn't just randomly present, he was placing himself between me and the exit, his body language alert and focused entirely on me. My boyfriend seemed to be deliberately escalating the argument, using more of those trigger phrases I'd heard him training with. When I said I thought he was being unreasonable about changing our plans last minute, Rex's low growl filled the room. My boyfriend immediately looked at the dog with this satisfied expression, like he was pleased with Rex's response. That's when I realized this wasn't just about training Rex to be aggressive, it was about training him to be aggressive on cue during our arguments as a way to control and intimidate me. The moment that changed everything happened 3 days ago. We were having a disagreement about money. I'd questioned why he'd spent so much on new tools when we were supposed to be saving for a vacation. It wasn't even a real fight, just one of those conversations couples have about financial priorities. But my boyfriend started using more of his trigger language, and I could see Rex responding exactly as he'd been trained. The dog's entire demeanor shifted from relaxed to predatory. His ears were forward, his tail was stiff, and his eyes were locked on me with an intensity that made my stomach drop. When I tried to walk away from the conversation, saying I needed some space to think, my boyfriend called out in that specific tone I'd heard during his secret training sessions. He said, "Protect me," in a voice that sounded almost casual, but I knew it was anything but casual. Rex launched himself at me faster than I could react. His teeth sank into my forearm, and the pain was immediate and shocking. He wasn't just nipping or warning, he was biting down with the full force of his jaw, shaking his head slightly like he was trying to tear something. I screamed and tried to pull away, which only made him bite harder. My boyfriend jumped up and started yelling at Rex to let go. But there was something performative about his panic that didn't feel genuine. It took him several seconds to physically intervene, seconds that felt like hours while Rex's teeth were embedded in my arm. When he finally got the dog to release me, I was bleeding significantly and in severe pain. The ride to the emergency vet clinic was surreal. My boyfriend kept apologizing and expressing shock about Rex's behavior, but I caught him watching me in the rearview mirror with this calculating look. At the clinic, while the vet was cleaning and bandaging my wounds, he put on this elaborate show of being a concerned pet owner whose dog had inexplicably attacked his girlfriend. He told the vet that Rex must have sensed my aggression during our argument and reacted protectively. He talked about how stressed the dog had been lately, how he'd noticed some behavioral changes, how devastated he was that this had happened. The vet seemed to buy his story completely, even suggesting that we might need to consider behavioral modification or rehoming Rex if he was becoming territorially aggressive. But I saw what happened next, and it confirmed every horrible suspicion I'd been harboring. While the vet was writing up discharge instructions and I was signing paperwork with my uninjured hand, my boyfriend reached into his pocket and discreetly gave Rex a treat. Not just any treat, one of the special high-value training treats he used during their secret sessions. He rewarded Rex for biting me. I managed to keep my expression neutral, but inside I was screaming. This man, who I'd been planning a future with, had just rewarded our dog for attacking me on command. The casual way he did it, like it was the most natural thing in the world, made me realize that this had probably been the plan all along. The drive home was silent. My arm was throbbing despite the pain medication, and my mind was racing with the implications of what I'd discovered. I wasn't just living with someone who had trained my dog to attack me. I was living with someone who was actively pleased that his training had worked. Update 1. I've been staying at my sister's house for the past week while I figured out what to do next. I told her I needed space after the dog bite incident, but I haven't explained the full situation yet. I'm not sure she'd believe me, and honestly, I'm still processing the betrayal myself. My boyfriend has been texting me constantly, asking when I'm coming home and expressing concern about my arm. He's been sending pictures of Rex looking sad and lonely, saying the dog misses me and seems depressed without me around. The manipulation is so obvious now that I know what to look for, but it's still emotionally difficult to ignore completely. I've been researching dog training and behavioral modification online, trying to understand exactly what was done to Rex and whether it can be undone. What I learned is deeply disturbing. The type of training my boyfriend implemented is called selective aggression training, and it's typically used for protection dogs or in some cases fighting dogs. It requires consistent, methodical conditioning over several months. This means my boyfriend had been planning this for a long time, probably since shortly after we adopted Rex. He'd been systematically turning our pet into a weapon against me, while I remained completely oblivious. The level of premeditation involved makes me feel sick to my stomach. I also discovered that this type of training is extremely difficult to reverse. Rex has been conditioned to associate specific triggers with aggressive behavior, and those neural pathways are now deeply ingrained. Even with professional intervention, there's no guarantee that he could ever be completely trusted around me again. Yesterday, I decided to go back to the house while my boyfriend was at work to collect some of my belongings. I wasn't planning to confront him yet. I just needed my laptop, some clothes, and important documents. I figured I'd be in and out quickly, and Rex would probably be crated or in the backyard. But Rex was loose in the house, and the moment I opened the door, his behavior confirmed everything I'd suspected. He didn't greet me with his old enthusiasm, but he also wasn't immediately aggressive. Instead, he seemed to be waiting for something, a cue, a command, a signal about how he should respond to my presence. I moved very carefully through the house, speaking to Rex in calm, neutral tones while I gathered my things. He followed me from room to room, not threatening but clearly monitoring my every move. It was like living with a loaded weapon that could go off at any moment. While I was packing, I decided to look for evidence of the training my boyfriend had been doing. In his bedside drawer, I found a small notebook with detailed training logs. Page after page of notes about Rex's responses to different commands, which triggers were most effective, and how to reinforce the aggressive behaviors during actual arguments. The entries were dated and methodical like a scientific experiment. There were notes about my behavioral patterns, the specific words I used when I was upset, and strategies for escalating conflicts to create opportunities for Rex's training sessions. Reading it felt like discovering that someone had been studying me like a lab rat for months. But the most chilling entry was from the day Rex bit me. My boyfriend had written a detailed analysis of the incident, noting that Rex's response time was excellent, and that the bite was delivered with appropriate force. He'd also noted areas for improvement, like getting Rex to maintain his grip longer, and to be more aggressive in his initial approach. He was treating my injury like a successful training outcome. I photographed every page of that notebook with my phone, then put it back exactly where I found it. I also found the bag of special training treats he'd been using, hidden in the garage behind some tools. Everything was exactly as I'd suspected, but seeing the physical evidence made the reality of the situation hit me like a truck. As I was leaving the house, Rex followed me to the door. For just a moment, I saw a flash of the sweet, loving dog he used to be. His tail gave a small wag, and he tilted his head in that adorable way that used to make me melt. But then his training kicked in, and his expression became guarded again. I realized that Rex was as much a victim in this situation as I was. My boyfriend had taken an innocent, trusting animal and turned him into something dangerous. Rex didn't understand what had been done to him. He was just following the conditioning he'd received from the human he trusted most. That night, I finally told my sister everything. I showed her the photos of the training notebook, explained about the secret sessions I'd overheard, and described the systematic way my boyfriend had been manipulating both me and Rex. Her reaction was immediate and intense, a mixture of horror, anger, and protective concern that made me realize how abnormal my situation had become. She wanted to call the police immediately, but I explained that I wasn't sure what laws had actually been broken. Training a dog to be aggressive isn't necessarily illegal, especially if it's your own dog. And proving that he'd done it deliberately to intimidate me would be difficult without more evidence. But she made a good point about the bigger picture. This level of manipulation and planning suggested that my relationship problems went far deeper than I'd recognized. Someone who would spend months training a dog to attack their partner on command was capable of much worse things. I've been staying with my sister for another week now, and my boyfriend's texts have become increasingly desperate and manipulative. He's alternating between guilt trips about abandoning Rex, promises that he'll get the dog professional training, and subtle threats about how difficult it will be for me to start over somewhere else. The threats are veiled but clear. He's reminded me that most of our shared belongings are in his name, that I don't have enough money saved to get my own place immediately, and that Rex would be heartbroken if I never came back. He's also mentioned several times how much Rex misses me and how depressed the dog has become. But I know that Rex's depression is probably just the result of his training routine being disrupted. Without regular reinforcement sessions, the aggressive conditioning might be weakening, which could actually be a positive development. I've decided that I can't go back to that house or that relationship, regardless of the financial complications. Living with someone who would weaponize our pet against me isn't just dangerous. It's a complete violation of trust that can never be repaired. Update 2. 3 weeks have passed since my last update, and the situation has escalated in ways I never expected. My boyfriend's behavior became increasingly erratic after I stopped responding to his texts, and what happened next proved that my instincts about leaving were absolutely correct. Last Monday, my sister and I went to the police station to file a report about the dog training situation. I brought printed copies of the notebook photos and a detailed timeline of events. The officer we spoke with was initially skeptical. Apparently, cases involving pets being used for intimidation are rare and difficult to prosecute. But when I showed him the training notebook with its detailed logs and specific references to using Rex during our arguments, his attitude changed completely. He said the level of planning and documentation suggested intentional creation of a dangerous situation, and possibly criminal intimidation through use of an animal. The officer advised me to get a restraining order and to document any further contact from my boyfriend. He also suggested that I might want to consider reporting the incident to animal control, since Rex could be considered a dangerous animal due to his training. That same afternoon, while I was at the courthouse filing for the restraining order, my boyfriend showed up at my sister's house with Rex. My sister called me immediately, and I could hear Rex barking aggressively in the background. She said my boyfriend was demanding to know where I was and claiming that I'd stolen property from the house. The property he was referring to was apparently the notebook I'd photographed. He discovered that someone had been through his things and somehow figured out that I'd found his training records. My sister refused to let him in the house and threatened to call the police if he didn't leave immediately. But here's where things got really scary. Instead of leaving, my boyfriend started using Rex's trigger commands right there on my sister's front porch. He said, "Protect me," and she's being unreasonable, in that special training voice, and Rex immediately became aggressive, straining against his leash and barking with intense focus toward the house. My sister was terrified, but she had the presence of mind to record the incident on her phone. The video clearly shows my boyfriend deliberately triggering Rex's aggressive behavior as a form of intimidation. It's exactly the evidence I needed to prove that the dog training was intentional and being used to threaten me. The police arrived within minutes and arrested my boyfriend for violating the restraining order I'd just filed. Rex was taken to animal control for evaluation, which broke my heart but was necessary for everyone's safety. The arresting officer told me that the video my sister recorded would be crucial evidence in the criminal case. Over the next few days, I learned more about my boyfriend's background that I'd never known before. Apparently, this wasn't his first relationship involving pet-related manipulation. His ex-girlfriend from 5 years ago had also reported incidents of him training their dog to be aggressive toward her, but she'd never pressed charges. The pattern was almost identical: gradual conditioning of a naturally friendly dog to respond aggressively to specific triggers, usually during relationship conflicts. The ex-girlfriend had eventually given up the dog and moved out of state to get away from the situation. Learning this made me realize how lucky I was to have discovered what was happening before it escalated further. My boyfriend was released on bail after 3 days, but the restraining order prohibited him from contacting me or coming near my sister's house. However, he started showing up at my workplace, always staying just outside the legal distance required by the restraining order but making sure I could see him. He would stand across the street from my office building sometimes for hours just watching. He never approached or tried to speak to me, but his presence was clearly meant to be intimidating. My coworkers noticed and started walking me to my car after work, but the psychological impact of being watched was taking its toll. The animal control evaluation of Rex revealed the extent of the training he'd received. The behavioral specialist who examined him found clear evidence of systematic conditioning for selective aggression, and noted that Rex's responses to specific verbal triggers were immediate and intense. They recommended that Rex be placed with a specialized rescue organization that deals with dogs who have been trained for aggression. This was heartbreaking news, but I understood that Rex couldn't be safely rehomed as a normal pet. The conditioning he'd received had fundamentally changed his neurological responses, and reversing that type of training requires months or years of intensive work by professionals. Most importantly, Rex could never be trusted around me again, even with extensive rehabilitation. The criminal case against my boyfriend was moving forward, but slowly. The prosecutor explained that cases involving animals used for intimidation are complex and require careful documentation. My boyfriend's attorney was arguing that the dog training was for protection purposes, and that I was misinterpreting normal pet behavior. But the evidence was overwhelming. The training notebook, the video of him triggering Rex's aggressive behavior, the testimony from his ex-girlfriend, and the animal control evaluation all painted a clear picture of deliberate, systematic manipulation. The prosecutor was confident that we could prove criminal intimidation and possibly animal abuse charges. 2 weeks ago, something happened that changed everything. My boyfriend violated the restraining order by coming to my sister's house late at night. He was apparently drunk and agitated, pounding on the door and shouting about wanting to explain himself. My sister called the police immediately, but before they arrived, he tried to break in through the back door. The attempted break-in was captured on my sister's security cameras, showing my boyfriend trying to force open a locked door while shouting threats. When the police arrived, he became combative and resisted arrest. They found a knife in his car, along with what appeared to be veterinary sedatives and a dog leash. The implications were terrifying. The prosecutor believes he was planning to sedate and take Rex from the animal control facility, possibly to use the dog to intimidate or harm me. The presence of the knife suggested even more sinister intentions. This incident resulted in additional charges including attempted breaking and entering, possession of burglary tools, and making terroristic threats. My boyfriend is now being held without bail, and the judge has extended the restraining order for 2 years. The prosecutor is recommending a prison sentence of 3 to 5 years if he's convicted on all charges. More importantly, he's been ordered to undergo psychological evaluation to determine if he's a threat to future partners. Final update. 6 months have passed since this nightmare began, and I'm finally ready to share how everything resolved. The criminal case concluded last month with my boyfriend pleading guilty to multiple charges including criminal intimidation, animal abuse, and attempted breaking and entering. He was sentenced to 4 years in prison with the possibility of parole after 2 years, provided he completes anger management and psychological counseling programs. The judge was particularly harsh in his sentencing remarks, noting that the systematic nature of the dog training showed a disturbing level of premeditation and manipulation. He also mentioned that using an animal to intimidate and potentially harm a domestic partner represented a particularly cruel form of abuse that warranted serious consequences. Rex's story had a better ending than I initially hoped. The specialized rescue organization that took him has been working with him for months, and his progress has been remarkable. The behavioral specialist reported that much of his aggressive conditioning has been successfully reversed through consistent, positive reinforcement training. More surprisingly, Rex has been matched with a new family, a couple who specifically works with rehabilitating dogs who have been trained for aggression. They have extensive experience with this type of behavioral modification and Rex has been living with them for 2 months now. According to the rescue organization, he's becoming the sweet, gentle dog he was meant to be. I received photos of Rex in his new home last week, and seeing him playing happily in a backyard with his new family brought me to tears. He looks relaxed and joyful in a way I hadn't seen since the early days of his training. While I'll always miss the dog he used to be, I'm grateful that he's getting the chance to be that dog again with people who can give him what he needs. As for me, I've completely rebuilt my life. I found my own apartment, a small but cozy place where I feel safe and independent. My sister helped me move and has been incredibly supportive throughout this entire process. I've also started volunteering at the local animal shelter, partly as a way to process my own experience and partly because I want to help other animals who might be in similar situations. The volunteer work has been therapeutic in unexpected ways. I've learned that animals used for intimidation or abuse are more common than I realized, and there are established protocols for helping them recover. I've also met other people who have experienced similar situations, and sharing our stories has helped all of us heal. I've been in contact with my boyfriend's ex-girlfriend, the one who experienced similar dog training manipulation. She's been an incredible source of support and validation. Talking with someone who truly understands what it's like to have a beloved pet turned into a weapon against you has been invaluable for my emotional recovery. Together, we've been working with a local domestic violence organization to raise awareness about pet-related abuse and intimidation. It's apparently more common than most people realize, but it's rarely reported because victims often don't recognize it as abuse or don't think anyone will believe them. The financial impact of leaving was significant, but manageable. I lost most of our shared belongings, but I'd rather start over with nothing than continue living in fear. My sister lent me money for the security deposit on my apartment, and I've been slowly rebuilding my savings. Material things can be replaced, but safety and peace of mind are priceless. The emotional recovery has been more complex. I went through a period of intense anger, not just at my boyfriend but at myself for not recognizing the signs earlier. I felt stupid for loving and trusting someone who was capable of such calculated cruelty. I also grieved the loss of the relationship I thought I had, the future I thought we were building together. But I've gradually realized that none of this was my fault. My boyfriend was skilled at manipulation and had apparently done this before. The training he implemented was sophisticated and gradual enough that even professionals had difficulty detecting it initially. I couldn't have known what I didn't know, and blaming myself for his actions only continued the cycle of abuse. I've started dating again very cautiously. The experience with my ex-boyfriend has made me much more aware of red flags and manipulation tactics. I'm taking things slowly and paying attention to how potential partners treat animals, how they handle disagreements, and whether their words match their actions consistently over time. Most importantly, I've learned to trust my instincts. When something feels wrong, even if I can't immediately explain why, I now know to take those feelings seriously. The subtle signs I ignored or rationalized away during my relationship were actually my subconscious recognizing danger that my conscious mind wasn't ready to acknowledge. I still think about Rex sometimes and wonder if he remembers me. I hope he doesn't remember the fear and confusion he must have felt during his training, when his natural instincts were being systematically rewired. I hope he only remembers the good times we had together, when he was just a beloved pet in a happy home. The legal case is completely closed now, and I have no further contact with my ex-boyfriend. The restraining order remains in effect, and I hope I never see him again. According to the prosecutor, he'll be required to register as a domestic violence offender when he's released, which will hopefully protect his future partners. This entire experience has changed me in ways I'm still discovering. I'm more cautious but also more confident. I'm more aware of potential dangers, but also more appreciative of genuine kindness and safety. I've learned that I'm stronger than I knew, and that I have people in my life who will support me through the worst situations. If anyone reading this is experiencing something similar, please know that you're not alone and it's not your fault. Pet-related abuse and intimidation are real forms of domestic violence, and there are resources available to help. Trust your instincts, document everything you can, and don't hesitate to reach out for help. The road to recovery isn't easy, but it's absolutely worth it. I'm happier and more at peace now than I've been in years. I sleep soundly in my own bed, in my own home without fear. I can have disagreements with people without worrying about violent consequences. I can trust my own perceptions and feelings without second-guessing myself constantly. Most importantly, I've reclaimed my life and my future. The plans I thought I was building with my ex-boyfriend were based on lies and manipulation. The life I'm building now is entirely my own, based on my own choices and values. It's smaller and simpler than what I thought I wanted, but it's real and it's mine. Rex is living his best life with his new family. I'm building a life based on truth and safety, and my ex-boyfriend is facing the consequences of his actions. Sometimes justice really does prevail, even in situations that seem hopeless. I'm grateful for that outcome, and I'm grateful for the strength I found to fight for it.